It started with a notification I wasn't supposed to see. A small blue glow that slid across my lock screen and turned the glass of the bedside table into a thin sheet of cold water. Team Banter. She's probably still typing her emails like it's 2008. I watched it breathe. Bright, dim, bright. Like a pulse that didn't belong to me. The apartment was quiet enough to hear the refrigerator hum and the elevator cable down the hall purr once in its shaft. The city outside held its breath the way buildings do at 2 a.m. when only the lights are awake. I didn't touch the phone. I let it glow and disappear and glow again until recognition replaced disbelief. It wasn't a mistake. Not another Sandra, not another team. It was mine. My name is Sandra Keene. I'm 47, communications manager. 16 years in the same company, 5 directors, more campaigns than birthdays, and a career made out of making other people sound human. I write apologies that arrive just in time, memos that sand down sharp edges, newsletters that make bad weeks look purposeful. If anyone should know how to handle words, it's me. But that night, the words weren't mine. They were arranged like little polished pebbles being skipped across a dark pool, beautiful in their arc, ugly in their intent. I opened the chat with the kind of care you give a fragile thing you don't plan to keep. 8 avatars blinked into certainty. The faces were familiar in the way fatigue is. Daily, unavoidable, lightly resented. People I trained, people who borrowed my phrasing and my pens, people I'd defended in performance reviews with lines like calm under pressure and meticulous with tone. At the top was Ava Wren, my new director, who called me steady, classic, anchor in the first week and never again. The thread moved like lazy water. Did you see her newsletter headline? Comma Queen strikes again. Imagine her running TikTok. Ava's reaction was aflame. The people below her laughed, and I watched their laughter stack into something architectural. I placed the phone face down and listened to the dark. 16 years of loyalty has a sound to it when it cracks. It isn't a shatter. It's a quiet subtraction. The way a printer runs out of ink line by line until the page holds the ghost of a sentence you wrote. I slept the way machines sleep. Not rest, just lower power. Morning showed up without color. The elevator mirror gave me a face that looked like mine arranged by someone who respected grids. The office woke in strips. Row of lights, row of screens, row of chairs. The ritual choreography of places that confuse movement for progress. It smelled like burnt coffee and toner, the cologne of institutions. On my desk was a mug I designed years ago for a training I built and taught and believed. Digital messages are forever. The words used to feel paternal. Now they felt like a weather report. When my computer unlocked, the same bubble waited in the corner of the screen as if it had spent the night there rehearsing its entrance. I opened it for timestamps, not for content. 8:17 p.m., 9:03, 10:42, 8 people. 27 laughing emojis. 0 hesitation. Someone wrote she writes as if punctuation is a mood. I almost smiled, because punctuation is a mood. Mine ends with a period large enough to sit on. At 9, I sat in the glass room named for a bird that had never flown in this city and watched my slides appear without my name. Let's talk about our communication culture, Ava said, and the room agreed that we should. Phones were face down the way etiquette used to be face up. She talked about a younger voice, a fresher tone, and the compliment was built to fail people like me. The team nodded. I arranged my face like a lowercase yes. Leaving the meeting felt like stepping out of a museum where the exhibit had borrowed your furniture and called it modern. I ate alone on the roof at noon. Because roofs are the last honest rooms. Wind as feedback. Sky as ceiling. No Wi-Fi strong enough to carry regret. The city below buzzed like servers. Air-conditioned certainty. A tight hum that says everything important is happening in cabinets. I remembered orientation slides I wrote 5 years earlier. Words travel. Decide if you want to go with them. I had meant it as advice. It came back as prophecy. I imagined the faces in the chat and felt an emotion that had burned down into a single cold thing. Not anger, not hurt, alignment. Back at my desk, I opened the internal dashboard. It was a path my hands knew on their own, muscle memory arranged by responsibility. Newsletters, alerts, internal channels. The chat lived under shared workspace, not personal accounts. Corporate property. Servers don't have favorites. They have policies. Ours backed up everything at 2 a.m. to a directory that didn't care how charming you were in daylight. Each message had a home. Each deletion had a ghost. Each reaction wore a timestamp like a birth tag. That's when something in me slid from soft tissue to framework. No screenshots, no emails. No whisper to HR with an attachment that makes you look smaller than the file. The system was already speaking. It just hadn't been asked to read aloud. I closed the dashboard and breathed the way divers do when the surface is near. They wanted noise. I would give them silence. Silence is just truth at its preferred speed. The week clicked forward like a metronome. The thread didn't stop. The jokes were efficient. The cruelty was sustainably sourced. My name stopped showing up on documents it used to occupy. Meetings developed convenient overlaps. Affection arrived as advice. You should try to engage more, Ava said in a voice manufactured to be warm at scale. Engage is a word that wears soft shoes to step on your throat. I nodded. I'll try, I said. The trick was not to be believed. By Wednesday, the pause had a shape. It entered rooms half a second before I did, and sat down at the table where the coffee stains draw constellations you learn to read. It's the moment between a door opening and a sentence pretending it wasn't already in motion. I didn't fill it. I let it exist. People think silence is absence. I've learned it's evidence. At night, the apartment performed being mine. I cooked because eating meals at an empty table is an honest way to count time. The phone glowed again. She'll probably write a press release about this. I let the light paint the ceiling and fade. I didn't mute the chat. Muting is an argument. Listening is an archive. Sleep came on like a dimmer switch. Somewhere downtown in a locked room with circulating air and floor tiles designed to be mopped without looking, the company servers were waiting to remember. Friday arrived wearing its good shirt. There is a choreography to endings that aren't final, a cheerful calendar invite, a casual after-work drink, a look you can print out and hand to lawyers. The team's casual sync happened without me. At home, I watched the chat narrate its evening. Where's Sandra? Maybe sinking her soul. Reaction, reaction, reaction. I turned off the screen and watched the room go lightly blue, then gray, then mine. The following week built a shape from repetition. Names I should have been copied on evaporated. The young people at the far table laughed in a key that sounded like electricity. The roof stayed honest, and my mug told the truth until it looked tired of it. 11:58 on a Tuesday, the compliance reminder slid into view. Quarterly audit. Full system export scheduled Friday, 5 p.m. And my breath made a sound I pretended was just breath. I wrote myself an email with no content other than a subject and hit send to no one but the future. Audit preparation. Notes for communication sync. The subject line was a string tied to my own finger. Time loves receipts. Ava called me in that afternoon to congratulate me on my calm. It's good to have your steady energy, she said, the way people say fire extinguisher. Could you give feedback on the deck for digital well-being? The slide was mine, lifted from last year, moved 4 inches to the left and given a gradient. I nodded in the same voice that says no in a way the room doesn't hear. Calm is just clarity with better timing, I said. She laughed because the joke was shaped like a compliment. By Thursday, the thread was louder because it was afraid. Delete the memes before IT sees them. Ava, you better clean your digital footprint. We're doomed, LOL. Deletions leave fossils. The log wrote them down as if they were gifts. Deleted message recorded, 1852:07. Deleted message recorded, 1854:32. Panic is terribly legible. Sunday evening. I went into the office because buildings are most honest when empty. Security nodded because I am the kind of person who looks like paperwork. The screens were black and reflective. My reflection was a formal apology from a face that had stopped asking for anything back. I sat down, opened the admin panel, and looked at the folder name that pretended to be a joke long enough to become one. Team Banter. The cursor hovered over rename. Renaming is a small ceremony that changes context into consequence. I typed company server backup and pressed save. The sound was a small digital click you wouldn't hear if you weren't waiting for it with your whole body. Renaming is the politest kind of power. It doesn't touch content. It touches meaning. No one noticed. Noise doesn't notice its own echo chamber being relabeled. Monday wore its mask. Tuesday adjusted its tie. Wednesday listened to itself talk. The chat kept moving with the lazy speed of a river used to carrying garbage in a beautiful direction. I let it be. I watered the plant on my windowsill because roots like regularity. The export ticked every night at 2 a.m., an old machine breathing on schedule. 2 days before the audit, HR mailed the building with cheerful gravity. Thank you for your cooperation during our routine data integrity review. Please refrain from deleting messages during this period. Half the people panicked into deleting. Half the people panicked into not deleting. The thread went quiet with the intensity of a child hiding behind a curtain with their feet visible. There is a quality to silence when it is not yours. It has corners. I walked past the server room that afternoon and watched the lights blink in a rhythm that reminded me of a classroom clock. There is something devotional about the hum of machines that never intend to be moved. It is the sound of patience somebody else already paid for. I didn't pray. I thanked. Thank you for doing your job. Thank you for not caring about charisma. Thank you for remembering what people pretend to forget. The machines answered by continuing to exist. The day of the audit arrived dressed like a Thursday pretending to be Friday. The air was sharper. Keyboards were quieter. Jokes wore suits. At noon, IT declared export initiated. Estimated completion 5 o'clock. I minimized the window because supervision performs lack of trust, and I didn't want the system to think I doubted it. At 4:53, the mail arrived that changed the room without changing the light. Export successful. HR compliance folder updated. 12 archives. 432 messages. 8 contributors. 0 filters. I didn't open it. Opening is a speech. Silence had done the writing. Silence could do the reading. That weekend, my phone slept the sleep of things forgiven. I turned off notifications because even victory doesn't need to beep. I repotted a fern that had survived neglect by learning the exact tone of my window. Dirt under nails has a decency I missed. I thought about the training slide I'd open again on Monday, the one with the line people thought was corporate poetry and I knew was structural engineering. Write as if the recipient is in the room with you. I pictured 8 faces reading their own words out loud and wondered how many would recognize their voices. Monday morning, the summons arrived like a polite weather alert. Audit review, conference room A, attendance, communications department, and I smoothed my blazer in the elevator without looking in the mirror because I didn't need my face to practice. The room smelled like toner and consequence. HR sat with IT. Ava sat with her hands folded in a way that meant please. 3 folders waited on the table wearing the kind of labels that don't blink. The first page of the transcript contained my surname in a sentence that had never met my face. The second page had a meme version of me with a typewriter. The third page had a joke about human press releases. HR's pen hovered. Its laptop reflected the ceiling. Ava said it was casual team talk, a way to lighten stress, a modern bonding ritual. HR explained company property. IT explained scheduled backups. Someone asked who authorized the rename. I said I did to correct a mislabeled channel in alignment with the backup structure. I let the silence breathe and then said all I did was rename it. The air practiced not being air for a second. Then HR said the rename saved us trouble, and IT nodded in a language made of acronyms, and Ava blinked in a way that looked like switching to a different version of herself. When HR asked if I wanted to comment, I said the system already spoke. The rest of the hour unfolded like a time-lapse of a bridge being built, piece by inevitable piece. Metadata explained, deletions logged, context read back to its senders. Accountability isn't loud, it's chronological. When the room emptied, I washed my old mug in the sink because objects love continuity. Digital messages are forever looked a little less like a threat and a little more like a vow. People outside the room knew something without knowing what. the way buildings know when the fire alarm is being tested. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and saw a red lock next to the folder that used to be a joke. Archived. Untouchable. Same data, different meaning. That's the whole trick of language. I answered 3 unrelated emails, wrote a memo about an initiative that would leave no scar, and when HR asked for help drafting new guidelines for respectful digital communication, I said yes, because repair is the only victory worth keeping. That night, the city's windows turned on in squares until the building across from mine looked like a spreadsheet filling itself. I poured a glass of water and stood in my kitchen with the light off, watched my phone on the table not glow, thought about how silence is not the absence of speech, but the presence of choice. I picked up my notebook, the paper one where the system can't follow, and wrote 1 line. Not for court, not for policy, for the small and exact comfort of a sentence that knows where it's going. Sometimes you don't break the system. You let the system break itself. The week that followed was quiet in the same way winter mornings are. Sound existing, just slower. The office spoke in lowercase. Laughter returned carefully, stripped of edges. Ava's door stayed closed. Her nameplate disappeared by Friday. HR called it administrative leave, the way they name storms. I didn't celebrate. Justice that works doesn't throw parties. Instead, I worked. I built sentences the way some people build shelters. Precise, quiet, meant to last. HR asked me to help rebuild the internal communication policy. The irony was a perfect circle. They wanted the woman who had been dissected by words to design the rulebook for using them. I said yes because healing is sometimes disguised as documentation. For 3 weeks, I wrote. I replaced every command with an invitation, every warning with a mirror. Old rule: use professional tone when communicating internally. New rule: write as if the recipient is in the room with you. Old rule: do not disclose confidential information. New rule: remember that servers remember longer than you do. Each revision was a breadcrumb out of the forest we built for ourselves. The company printed my edits on thick paper, the kind that smells like faith. HR called it the Digital Integrity Handbook. They liked my tagline: respect is not optional. They didn't know it was the sentence that saved me. One afternoon, a new designer stopped by my desk. She couldn't have been more than 24, bright-eyed in that way you are before you learn how meetings bruise. I heard what happened, she said softly. You made it through without, making it ugly, I smiled. Ugly never ages well. She tilted her head, thinking. You make silence look powerful. Silence isn't power, I said. It's just proof you don't need permission to be right. She left smiling, and I realized that what she saw as strength was really survival dressed nicely. HR asked me to speak at the next management training. The weight of words. The same conference room where Ava once joked about my commas now smelled of new markers and faint anxiety. I told them a story that wasn't mine and was. A team that bonded over jokes, forgot the system was listening, and learned that the internet has perfect memory and terrible timing. The managers laughed, relieved it wasn't about them, and I let them. After the session, I turned off the projector and sat alone with the room's glow still fading from the walls. It hit me then. I had become what I once wrote about: measured, composed, sharp enough to cut through noise but not bleed from it. There's peace in being done defending yourself. Weeks blurred. The office grew calmer, kinder in small ways. Coffee tasted less metallic. Emails read more like people. The culture shifted, not loudly but consistently, like light moving across a clock face. The campaign rolled out. Respect is not optional on the digital billboards in the lobby, next to words I'd written when I still doubted they'd matter. I passed them every morning like proof that things can change if you teach them how to speak. Ava never came back. HR sent her official statement to all staff, the kind that begins with, "We wish her the best in future endeavors." I read it twice and thought, future endeavors is a beautiful phrase for nowhere in particular. I didn't reply. Some stories close better unsigned. Months passed. The joke that became evidence became myth. The department moved on. I stayed because leaving would have made it look like survival required escape. It didn't. Survival just needed stillness. On a Friday night in late spring, I stayed late again, the way habits refused to retire. The city beyond the glass looked pixelated in gold. I shut down my computer and saw my reflection, steadier now, face framed by the dim glow of a screen going dark. For months I had been waiting for the sound of resolution. Turns out it sounds like nothing. My phone buzzed once, a calendar reminder from the first audit day, now outdated. I cleared it. I opened my notebook instead, the paper one, where silence keeps its shape. I wrote, "To anyone who ever felt small in a room full of noise, stay quiet long enough for truth to echo." I closed the book without reading it back. Some messages work better unsent. As I left, my monitor went black and flashed the screensaver I'd set months ago. Digital cruelty feels clean, until it isn't. I smiled. Justice isn't louder online. It's smarter. The truth archived itself. By the time I reached the elevator, I felt it for the first time in years. Not victory, not relief, equilibrium. The elevator doors closed, and in the mirrored panel I saw a woman who had finally turned her silence into syntax. That's when I knew. The story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about precision. The company announced the new policy the following Monday. Internal communication guidelines updated. All informal chat groups subject to compliance review. Respect is not optional. The email came from HR, but it could have come from the servers themselves. I spent that week writing internal campaigns that actually said something. We taught people how to disagree without deleting each other. Tone improved. Meetings shortened. Laughter came back, the human kind. I started arriving later, leaving earlier. You learn to trust time again when it finally sides with you. 4 months later, at the annual leadership summit, I saw her. Ava, the name that used to fill the chat like static. Her badge now said independent consultant, the corporate word for exile. She stood near the stage, the same way she used to before team meetings, chin lifted, smile symmetrical. Her keynote topic flashed on the screen, the power of honest communication. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because irony finally had rhythm. She spoke well. She always did. She talked about transparency and growth, about learning to listen. She quoted a line I'd written in a training deck months ago. Honesty is what we leave behind in our words, in files, in people. I wondered if she knew where she'd heard it first. When the applause faded, the crowd dissolved into cocktails and small talk. That's when she saw me. She hesitated, then walked over. "Sandra," she said softly, "it's good to see you." "It's been a while," I said. "You look great. How's communications?" "Still communicating," she laughed, brittle and bright. "I wanted to reach out before, but HR said it wasn't appropriate." "Policies are there for a reason," I said. She nodded, then exhaled like she'd practiced. I learned a lot through all that. About leadership. About accountability. "I'm glad," I said. "Not everyone gets the chance to learn with receipts." Her eyes tightened. "You were always precise." "Words matter," I said. "You taught me that." For a long moment we just stood there, two professionals dressed in the correct tone, surrounded by borrowed light. Then she asked, "Did you ever mean to ruin me?" I met her eyes steady. "No, you did that yourself. I just kept the file names accurate. You make it sound so clinical." It was. Cruelty is emotional. Accountability isn't. Her smile broke then, small and human. "You win," I shook my head. "No, Ava, we both lost something. I just learned from it sooner." The silence that followed was clean. She held out her hand. I took it, firm, brief, final. "Good luck," I said. "You too," she whispered. When she walked away, her reflection followed her across the mirrored wall, fading into the applause for the next speaker. I stayed until the end. I watched people clap for empathy, toast to integrity, talk about transparency with glasses that caught the stage light and fractured it into optimism. They didn't know the words on those slides had been rewritten by the woman their laughter once built on. That was enough. Outside, the night air was kind. The city hummed like it was exhaling. My phone buzzed once. Team banter. Archived. Access denied. It wasn't from anyone, just a system note. Still, it felt like closure. I deleted the app. At home, I poured wine into the cleanest glass I owned, opened my notebook, and wrote one last line. Revenge isn't the story. Recovery is. I closed the cover, watched the city lights shimmer against it like faint message bubbles, and realized no one was typing back. Sometimes karma just needs a rename. And sometimes silence writes the final line. Weeks turned into something gentler. The building that once held noise began to sound like a pause between breaths. People spoke softer, slower, like everyone had learned that language could bruise. Meetings started on time, ended early. Laughter came back, but the real kind, the one that doesn't look around to see who's missing before it begins. I moved my desk closer to the window. Mornings became light and paper, coffee cooling beside emails that no longer hid their intentions. Sometimes I'd look at the reflection of the skyline on the glass divider, faint, inverted, like the world was learning how to speak in lowercase. I liked that. I liked lowercase days. The company kept growing. New people arrived, old ones left, and the story of the audit that changed everything became an office legend, retold in softer versions, as if kindness could edit the past. I never corrected them. Sometimes truth needs space to exhale before it becomes wisdom. On the anniversary of the audit, I came in early. The floor was empty, lights half awake. I passed the server room, the quiet heart of the building, and paused. You can't see honesty, but you can hear it in that room. A constant hum, consistent, never gossiping. I smiled and whispered, "Good morning," like it was alive. In my office, the first sunlight hit the mug I'd had that night a year ago. Same one, a tiny crack along the handle still holding. I thought about everything that had happened because I decided not to react, and realized restraint isn't weakness, it's direction. Around 9, a message pinged from the new intern. Just a simple, "Hi Sandra, could you check my draft before I send?" I opened it. The subject line was, "Respect is not optional." I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, but because it fit. The world keeps recycling good lessons until we learn them properly. By noon, I took a walk around the block. The air had the clean taste of something unrecorded. I passed a cafe window and caught my reflection. Soft hair, calm eyes, no trace of that frozen nightlight from before. Maybe time doesn't fix things. It just changes the lens. When I returned, the office was busy again. Phones, meetings, typing. I sat down, unlocked my screen, and saw my wallpaper. A plain background, pale gray, with a single message bubble centered on it. Just empty, not waiting for words, not carrying any. The perfect symbol of a story finished. I took a slow breath and realized, silence isn't what remains after justice. It is justice when it's finally clean enough to stand on its own. That night, I stayed a little later, just to feel the quiet again. The city outside glowed like circuitry, every light a pulse, every building a memory. I turned off my monitor, and for a second the glass showed two worlds, my face and the city reflecting back. Both steady, both real. I didn't think about revenge anymore. I thought about balance. Because what started with noise ended with clarity. What tried to humiliate me taught me composure. And what they wrote became proof, not of what they thought I was, but who I decided to become. If you've ever faced something like this, tell me your story in the comments. I read everyone, because fairness doesn't shout, it stays. Like the video. And subscribe to Office Revenge Files for more stories where women turn silence into power. The last bubble fades, slow and soft. The screen turns black, and in that quiet, the world feels fair again.